Hey, so I'll kick it off, and because I'm supposed to be the moderator, which I'm sure we'll all be the moderator here. You guys seem very talented. Can I ask a question? How many people here are? I'm going to distinguish between current entrepreneurs and aspiring entrepreneurs. How many people here are aspiring entrepreneurs? Okay. How many people here are current entrepreneurs? Okay, if you didn't raise your hand, which is a few people, like, what are you? I'm just curious, like, passive, like...
Investors.
Investor? Okay, that's great. Yeah?
I work with a company in Turkey that brings startups to the US.
Okay, so you're an ecosystem player. Anyone else?
I'm with the Innovation Hub in Manila.
Okay, so you're an ecosystem leader. Great. Noah, tell us a little bit about Javelin.
Yeah, definitely. Javelin really started to support entrepreneurs at an earlier stage with institutional support from experienced founders at a dollar level that the industry had kind of, to some extent, left behind at the time we started, which was 2008. I am a former entrepreneur, and my partner Jed Katz, who started Javelin with me, also is a former entrepreneur. And we felt that when at the kind of $250,000 to a couple $1 million round level, it was pretty hard to find a firm that would really be focused on your success, that could really get behind the founders and partner with them, and for whom the investment was a full portfolio company. And we started with a $75 million fund in 2008, and just completed our third fund, and we're about to open our fourth fund. Actually in a matter of weeks, with 125 million, that'll bring the total to just under $500 million.
That's great. Now, one of the little known things, so Jen and Noah together are some of the best rated entrepreneurs in the world, the best rated venture capitalists in the world, on a site that I launched many moons ago called The Funded, which rates venture capitalists, and individually they are some of the best people to work with. And you're being a little modest because one of my friends, Scott Painter, who's been working with them, has said literally they're the best investors he's ever dealt with. So and maybe before we jump in, and I'll introduce myself in a moment, what's your philosophy of dealing with entrepreneurs that gets you that kind of praise in an industry where a lot of people in your position don't get a lot of praise, ever?
Great question. I very much have approached investing with that kind of lens of having been a 4-time founder and having raised, probably 20 plus rounds of funding. What I went through, and also, who I wanted as an investor, because I always had confidence in what I was doing and working on, and I wanted investors who would respect that and would be there to provide support and help, but didn't think their answer was the right answer. That we're coaches and not trying to be the player. And we're very cognizant of that. We really want to invest in entrepreneurs who want us to, who see value, right, and what we can bring to the partnership, but also recognize that they're in charge, right, and that's very much something that that we respect. So our relationship with entrepreneurs is very much about tell us where we can help, and tell us all the areas, and we'll work with you to find those areas that aren't covered, because we're investing in a stage where your teams aren't complete. Your company is Series A, the company still has a long ways to go to build the organizational infrastructure around it. And we're there to help fill in those gaps and, be there in a supportive role. I think also helping with fundraising is a big part of what we do, getting those next rounds raised.
Yeah, I don't ever feel like I'm in control, especially these days. My name's Adeo, everyone. Hi, welcome. Thanks for coming out. I run something called the Founder Institute. It's kind of large. We operate what could best be called an entrepreneurial training program, and we help you launch startups. We do that in about 150 cities around the world. You know, right now it might be, I think it was like 148, but I launched Marseille today, and so we're probably like, we launch about 5 cities a week, so it gets a little squirrely with the numbers at any one time. And just to give you a sense of scale and what we do, so as part of helping entrepreneurs launch businesses, we run a bunch of free events. Some of them are similar to this. So we put about 1,000 events on we put about 1,000 events on in the last 12 months. In the next 12 months, we'll put about 100,000 people through those free events worldwide. And out the back of that, we'll produce about 2,500 new technology startups, everywhere from Kabul, Afghanistan to Marseille, which launched today. Yeah, and then what we provide is we focus on structure and mentorship, not necessarily capital, because in different places where we operate, the capital markets are very different. So you're from the Philippines, we have a chapter there. You're from Turkey, we have a big chapter there and growing. And so, you know, in different markets, it's structure and mentorship works, but capital may be radically different, right? I want to jump into the topic today, which you're an expert on because you've funded a lot of companies that have gone through incubators and accelerators. And I'm kind of an expert on because I run a ginormous accelerator, you could say. So, you know, maybe we start with definitions because, as I said, as you say, there are these terms floating around, incubator and accelerator. And does any, maybe before I ask Noah and I to banter about this, who feels they know the definition of incubator and accelerator? Raise your hand. That's pretty good. All right, you want to give it a shot?
Well, I think I know the difference. I'm not sure about the exact definition, but for me, an incubator is for startups who are very at the first stage of their development, and an accelerator is to help them to scale up.
Okay. Noah? I didn't mean to interrupt your drinking of whatever you're drinking, but why don't you take a stab? I mean, okay, before you even answer though, just to be fair, we're gonna help give you some framework concepts, but in all fairness, the definitions are loosey-goosey, so there's no right answer, but maybe we can try and help.
Yeah, I think you have to kind of acknowledge that in most people's minds, the terms kind of merge together into, you know, a very general, you know, loosely defined concept of, like, you know, organizations that help startups. I think like the technical definition of an incubator is one where, you know, an idea is born. There's services and specific funding and oversight. In many cases, the incubator takes an outsized portion of the equity in return for that and has a significant amount of control. And the shared services are often like key pieces of the business. So the company is kind of tied, you know, to the incubator, and spinning it out is actually an effort because you have to you have to backfill the services. There's usually a group that runs the incubator, which is, you know, really not only coming up with the ideas or partnering with an entrepreneur to come up with the ideas, but is setting the strategy for the business. I think an accelerator is something that's really, that's quite different. It's kind of the opposite end of the spectrum at the basic level, and it's an organization that's set up to take existing teams and help them iterate and succeed, and help them get funded. I think is probably the number one thing, the number one function, you know, value that accelerators provide is like getting a team to the point where they're ready for funding.
Yeah, so going back, like if you look at the components, you've got 3 things in any of the programs, forgetting the labeling, okay? You've got, in no particular order, You got mentorship, right? You got services, and then you've got capital. And those are the three big things, right? And I don't know if you would agree with that. Obviously, each one has many things underneath it. Like, for example, Founder Institute, we have mentorship and structure, but I consider that under mentorship. Services, you could have legal, finance, board, blah, 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 and capital is also pretty wide range. Would you add anything or clarify?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right, and I would add that accelerators provide a peer group. So a big element of the value to entrepreneurs is to get to bring together a group of people at the same stage who can help each other, and then connections to the capital markets and investors. So it's part of capital, but it's an extension of capital, and it's more of a function of providing that exposure, but facilitating it in a way where entrepreneurs can actually, get in front of investors much more efficiently than they otherwise could, which is a big time savings and leads to a lot of serendipitous interaction that can, lead to funding events.
Yeah, and I'm muting my mic because we get some feedback with one another. But so in my experience, when we survey people that come out of the Founder Institute, and we're about 2,000 to 2,500 graduates a year, the peer group is probably one of the top three things that they say, if not number one. Mentorship or peer group and structure are the top three, but surprisingly, the peer group is oftentimes one of the top things. So that's something to factor in. Who are the other people that are going to be in the program? What is the reputation, et cetera? So tough question now, to open with a hard-hitting one. And we sort of define the spectrum of what they are, and we'll talk more about that, applying all that stuff in a moment. Would you go through one yourself?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's kind of like, like the operative question of the night. I guess in thinking about my experience as an entrepreneur, I did start my first company out of Berkeley, out of the business school, and I actually had a lot of those features already. I had a peer group of co-founders who were also students. We were actually in the entrepreneurship class when we worked on the plan for the company. One of our professors was Mario Rosati of Wilson Sonsini, Goodrich and Rosati, and Mario took us under his wing and helped us to fundraise, and under his name reached out to 20 investors and got us meetings with a bunch of great investors. So I really didn't need the incubator or accelerator support. I think once I'd been through that with my first company, I didn't really need that stuff anymore. So it wasn't necessary. I think I did kind of. My goal was to start a company, and I chose Berkeley to do it, and it wasn't accidental, it was actually intentional. So I think if I was more of an accidental entrepreneur, someone who just had the idea and hadn't been planning, for many years to do that and get established in Silicon Valley, then yeah, I think it could be really helpful.
So your answer is no, but let me just to clarify, you were conscious of the pieces that an incubator might provide, the network, whether it be peer or other. So essentially, I would put that into the support category. So and you built the funding. You built that yourself, right? So you didn't need the incubator because you deliberately designed something that filled those services.
Yeah, definitely. I think the MBA in a way was a way of getting into that place. So all that, what was the opportunity cost and the cost of getting that, and that was maybe the equivalent of giving up some equity in some sense. It turned out to have been a lot cheaper than it would have been to give up equity.
Yeah, well, equity, that's a whole other conversation we can have. So conversely, and excuse my language, I got fucked. So when I started my first company, we sold it for north of $750 million. And if can anyone guess how much I made?
$250,000.
No, 0. So I got fucked. And so now, you know, I was intentional and intentionally an idiot. So I would have benefited greatly from many of the things that incubators and good incubators and accelerators provide: structure, thinking about how to deal with them. I just had no idea what I was doing, and I got bamboozled and screwed ad nauseum. And so I designed, particularly the Founder Institute, to say like, hey, I was a really smart, capable guy. I like, built a 750 plus, it was actually over $750 million business. And but there are a lot of things that you don't know. And you know, thankfully we have someone from Shepard Mullen here. Hopefully she keeps you in line with the good side of the force. But there's definitely a dark side. So, you know, I would say one of the intangible benefits of an incubator and accelerator is like preventing you from getting royally screwed from people, you know, that aren't always good actors, right? And you know, I'll tell you something. So you're a good actor. I mean, you must see a lot of bad actors. You must see this happen all the time. I'm curious, like, you know, maybe from the perspective of companies that come out of incubators, have they fared better in your mind with respect to good actors, bad actors, or any? Because you have a number of them in your portfolio, right?
Yeah, definitely. So without naming names of bad actors, but
that's my job.
I do think that you know, sort of support network, that support structure, it does help. I mean, I know that definitely in the early days of YC, Paul Graham was like very much the protector of the graduates, and you know, really like, you know, wanted them to. He actually worked hard to try to like maximize valuations and keep terms really simple and straightforward. I think maybe that they may have overdid it a little bit, and they have kind of, you know, rolled that back a bit and tried to keep terms simple and straightforward, but let valuations kind of vary a little bit more. And that's you know, that's been good for maintaining the investor interests in the YC companies. But I think, yeah, there were a lot of, you know, entrepreneurs who went through YC who in some ways had, you know, they just wanted to build a product, right? They didn't know much about starting a company, and they could have easily been taken advantage of. So having that, you know, community around them really helped them in that sense, and I think it probably prevented a lot of you know, sort of dark side, you know, scenarios for folks. But you know, I think the most common way in which entrepreneurs in the long run can get screwed is actually in the later stage rounds, right? Where, you know, if you raise a lot of rounds of capital and the terms get complex, that's where the common tends to get crushed. So, you know, really the things that prevent that, you know, are more about management and operations and cost control and all that.
All right, well, you brought up something I want to cover, which is super important for everyone in this room. So we're going to come back to the companies that you funded and sort of your thoughts that coming out of an incubator, because you funded a bunch. Let's talk about the Series A, okay, which is another area you're an expert on. Here's the issue, okay? I'm just curious, how many people here think they want to raise a Series A? Okay, wait, hold your hands high, that's not a lot. And in fact, it's better. Well, you want to raise lots of Series A's. The Shepard Mullen team loves Series A's. Okay, so one of the interesting things to think, so your strategy with your company really varies widely whether you're going to need a Series A or not, right? And not every company, so who here is building a company and doesn't want to raise a Series A? Okay, so why not?
in my mind, we're not ready for it at this point. We're working on technology, we're working on market fit. And
But
we
so
need
so
this
never,
time.
or okay, who here thinks they might eventually want to raise the Series A? Let's put those hands up. All right, so someone who doesn't want to raise the Series A ever, is there anyone out there? Okay, so okay, one. But you know, the funny thing is, you have like the best business of anyone here. So this is like, she bootstrapped an 8-figure a year business on her own. So that's not fair. So she makes you all go to shame. But with that said, so everyone else here thinks they might want to raise the Series A at some point. This is a serious issue, because whether you go through an incubator or accelerator or not, the gating item for you is whether you're realistically ready for a Series A or not. And if you're never going to be ready, you need to know now. So, because that will change everything that you do. And maybe let's talk about that, and then we can tie it back to the incubator and accelerator decision. So, like, you're one of the more prolific Series A investors in the world. And just to give you a sense, about 1,400 deals do a Series A every year. So, you know, how many technology companies do you think are formed every year? Far in excess of 1,400. Like 100,000 or so? So we're talking about what, 1%? So what are the gating items for you to consider a Series A?
Yeah, definitely. I think it isn't just about metrics, right? So, you know, on average, our Series A's, the companies are probably actually at a $1 million plus annual run rate, you know, so 100K a month of revenue. You know, many are much higher than that.
Okay, so revenue of 100K. Does anyone here besides you, which is a lot more, does anyone here have 100K in revenue? I'm just gonna, don't mean to interrupt, but I just want to sort of call these out per month. I mean, I do, but okay, one. All right, check. Anyone else? Did I miss a hand? Is there a secret hand? Shepard Mullen, you got over 100K in revenue. All right, well, so that's one big one.
I would say a lot of the focus is on you know, product readiness needs to be like clear. So product market fit, right, should be like demonstrably established. So you have reference accounts in a B2B product, reference accounts that are prominent, you know, well-respected companies that can, you know, really endorse the product and that have gone to full production with the product. And ideally, you have a minimum of 3 to 5 of those who've really embraced the solution.
Can I ask about that? So if when you say really endorse the product, because you're gonna call them, right? This isn't like theoretically endorse it on a piece of paper. This is like, all right, I'm ready to make an investment, so I need to do what's called due diligence, and you pick up the phone and call them, right?
Yeah, I mean, we do reference calls. Reference calls are like the number one thing, you know. So you know, we're going to talk to the customers, and we're gonna ask them hard questions. We're gonna be careful not to like discourage the customers in any way. So that's really important. You know, we just did a call last week, for example, with actually an ad tech company, which you know, they are still getting funded occasionally. They're certainly getting started, and asked the largest media buyer in the world basically what their plans were for the product, and you know, they said we're all in. You know, we're definitely adopting it. So it's that kind of thing. Like that's okay. You know, that's Series A ready. I think.
So you can't BS your way around it. You can't be like, no, they love us. Trust me. Like, what's your plans with the product? We're all in. All right. Yeah, you know, we used it once or twice. So it's got it. So all right. What about B2C?
Sorry, B2C. Yeah, B2C is much more about it's growth rate. So it's growth rate and, you know, CAC to LTV. So understanding the economics.
CAC to LTV. Everyone know what that is? Does anyone not know what it is? It's okay. It's not a big deal. Okay. And you want me to do it or you do it? I have the mic, so I'll do it. CAC is your cost of customer acquisition, and LTV is called the lifetime value. Now, if it costs you $5 to acquire a customer in CAC, cost of customer acquisition, but you only make $4 in LTV, lifetime revenue, again, apologies for the language, but you're fucked because you have to spend $1 to make $4, but you basically lose $1 with every customer. Better way of saying it. So your CAC versus LTV is a very, it's called unit economics, and you can Google unit economics and read hundreds of poorly written articles about it all over the web. So, okay, growth rate, CAC versus LTV, what else in B2C?
The growth channel. So often with B2C products, you'll see a spurt of growth around a certain community or certain base of users. And the question, once that's tapped out, the question is, how do you get above that? Because you do need to build to reach scale with almost any B2C product. You're going to need tens of millions of customers, of users, minimum, on a monthly basis. So understanding what are the stages of growth, and having tested multiple channels and showed you can make them work is critical to providing that confidence that the product can fly.
So, okay, this is another super important point. Usually channels plateau, they have what's called marginal utility. There's other concepts where the term marginal utility can be applied. Switching costs, for example. If you're using one product and you're trying to offer a replacement, but your replacement is only 10% better, it doesn't have a great enough marginal utility to cause someone to switch. But all these marketing channels, whether it be Google ads or Facebook ads or postering or whatever else you're going to do, they have essentially marginal utility. They stop working at a certain point. And so let me ask about that before we go on to anything else outside of B2B and B2C. There are other things like team, I imagine. But when you were talking about the channels, you're saying not only do you want channels that are producing, I imagine you want some channels that are on deck as well, so that you can say, okay, they've tested these channels, they're not using them right now, but in 3 months when they need to, they're available.
Yeah, exactly. Knowing what's the next step. What are the phases of growth, and how do you prioritize them? What are the requirements to succeed? As you move into paid media, potentially move into awareness building media like television, and or turn up the volume on your organic modes of growth, be it content driven, word of mouth driven. Understanding what are the dials you need to turn and what it takes from a resource standpoint, to turn them is key. And a lot of that ties back into the market sizing. So, how many total users in the B2C context, ultimately could be a user of the product, right? How do you, those marketing tests are really important to seeing conversion rates, to getting confidence that when you go out to a global user base, you're going to be able to convert sufficient users. There's enough appeal of the product, right?
So let's go. So being Series A ready is really important. I want to burn through another thing, come back to incubators and accelerators, because basically, I would say a lot of incubators and accelerators, they're not going to accept you unless they think you can be Series A ready, so we're going to come to that in a sec. But just to finish maybe speed through any other things like team or whatever that you think is super important, it's a gating item in Series A, because the problem that is that if you're going into an incubator and accelerator, they want to put you into a Series A, and if you don't have a business that's going to be Series A ready, most incubators and accelerators will be like, no. But so back to some other key things.
Team of course is critical, and that's not just it isn't just skill set. It's the passion level of the team, It's the the rapport that you build with investors. A big part of the process is understanding receptivity to ideas, and is it a true dialogue? Can you build a partnership? You're getting married. You're courting, dating, and getting married in the course of like 6 weeks, and then you cannot get divorced.
Yeah.
So,
No divorces.
So a big part of it is just getting to know each other as people and as professionals, and there's a softer, more subjective aspect to team around that. So it's important that you are yourself, you project yourself. People will tell, that you can tell right away if somebody is not really being themselves in the meetings. I think the exit, path is often something we certainly think about. Like, you don't want to be over-focused on it, especially with a consumer product, because if you can really reach scale with a consumer product, you don't necessarily know where the exit's going to come from. But we've definitely, had seen companies where they were successful as businesses, but they weren't strategically relevant to anybody, and they just don't get a premium on acquisition, or they can't really find a buyer when they decide it's the right time to exit for whatever reason, and that's a problem. So that's a big part of the investment thesis. Is there a natural set of buyers for the company from an M&A standpoint, or can it reach the scale needed to go public?
So let me outline how this mapped back to incubators and accelerators, and we're running a little long, so we want to go to hot seats in a second. So basically, so something like the founder, so let me map out the incubator accelerator world for you. And I'm going to focus, it seems like most people here being aspiring entrepreneurs are entrepreneurs already. And sort of the company builder / incubator world is less appropriate for you. It's more like the accelerator path. So at the very beginning, you have a bunch of events like this, Startup Digest, Startup Weekend. They get people interested, enthused, and learning about the craft of entrepreneurship and the experience of being in a startup, which largely sucks. Then, and if you're ready for that, after you learn how sucky it is, you would go into something like a Founder Institute, which is a little bit more of we focus on the person, less on the business, right? After a Founder Institute, you might go into what are sometimes called seed accelerators. These are things like Y Combinator, Techstars, 500 startups, but they're literally thousands. I think there's 7,000 to 10,000. What they generally do, I look at them as sort of finishing schools for entrepreneurs, but by the time you're entering the seed accelerator, you're all the things that Noah just said applies to you, right? If you don't think, if you can't answer the questions in such a way that you think you can get a Series A, they're not going to let you in, because as Noah mentioned earlier, they're finishing schools for these startups to go get funding. Funding initially might come from angels or seed funds, but eventually they want you to get a Series A, and there's only about 1,400 Series A deals done in a year, so they're being very cognizant of the things that Noah said to make sure, like, well, listen, if there's no chance you can get a Series A, I don't want you in the program because it's a waste of our time, your time, and everything. And the odds are already pretty low that you're going to get it. So, and then after seed accelerate, now another phenomenon, and we don't have time to cover it because we're going to jump in the hot seats, but we can talk about it in questions, is that people will go through multiple seed accelerators, and there's actually kind of a staging of them a little bit. So like, you could go through, people go through Founder Institute and YC, people go through YC, and then they'll go through Techstars, people go through Techstars and then 500, so we can talk about that in the question. So there's actually a couple routine things that happen when you go through seed accelerators, sometimes more than once, and then usually you'll do a large angel round and some of the seed round etc. And we can answer all that in the questions. But I want to be cognizant of the hot seat time, and I see Stefano there like with the cane.
Yeah, I'm just trying to make sure that I'm not taking any time away. So the first hot seat is Ivo Georgiev, the founder of SEMA. Hi.
Hi there, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet
How do you say it? Evo, I-V-O,
Yeah.
easy.
No.
Do you need a mic?
Probably not. I teach computer science, so I don't. All right.
I don't teach computer science.
You teach a different kind of science. Okay, I'm a little surprised at this this format. I'm in the hot seat, but I get to ask you questions, which is great. Okay, briefly about me. I'm a startup junkie, even though I teach computer science. I've worked for 6. I started one of them, all unfortunately unsuccessful. But I know how sucky it is, but everything else is worse for me. For some reason, I like this kind of sucky. Yeah, so
I relate.
I had a biotech startup that lived for 2 years, so we spent a lot of money, but we didn't make a product. It was very difficult. But I learned a lot. And I want to start a new company now. Briefly about it. We all see the explosion of bot creation. They're about everything, but we think that bots are still very narrow-minded. We want to make a general purpose, intelligent bot. The question that I want to ask has to do with kind of personal doubt. What has been your personal worst detractor as an entrepreneur, and what did you do to stop it from preventing you to succeed?
All right, you can I, not that I want to get all sob story here. Wait, let me ask a clarifying question back to you. So, like, that I have like a limp or something? Are you talking like a personality problem or physical defect? Or are you talking about like some shit that happened in the world that like kicked me in the ass and then I had to overcome it? Is it external or internal?
Internal.
Oh God. All right, Noah.
All right, let me clarify quickly.
Dear Noah, why don't you take this question?
Yeah. No, I.
When you're a founder and the startup fails, you start looking for answers.
What do you do?
Yeah.
Noah, your internal detractors. You say a lot when you talk.
Yeah. So I have an answer for this question, which is
Thank
that
God.
if you are the only way you start something is if you are completely blind to the risks and don't care if it does not work. You just need to do it, and you set aside all those concerns, and you just jump off the cliff, and that is the only way to start something. If you start thinking about it too much, you'll never do it. And you know, the reality is it doesn't make sense, but it's got to be that you just got to jump.
Thanks. That
Great
actually
answer.
makes sense.
All right, so
That worked for me.
were you asking like a genuinely personal question? Because I'm happy to answer it generally personally, because I've been thinking about it while
I
Noah
had
gave you.
a more general question, but Stefan didn't like it. So
What are people saying?
he liked it. This way.
I'll let Noah take that one. All right, next question. Do you have another question? Or I'm happy to answer it. So look, generally I like people too much, so they end up fucking me. Excuse my language again. So then I overcompensate. So look, here's the thing. As an entrepreneur, you have to quickly know your strengths and weaknesses. If you're not self-aware to know what you're good at and what you're bad at, you're gonna be screwed, right? Fast, right? Because there's something called the DKE, Dunning-Kruger effect. Elon Musk taught me the term, and he in reference to most of humanity. So Dunning-Kruger theorized that like when you're bad at something, you think you're good, and when you're good at something, you think you're bad. Right? Because you're like, damn, I can't be the best in the world because like I'm not that good, but in fact you are. And then someone who really sucks is like, whoa, I just killed him, woo-hoo, I'm the best. And meanwhile, the dude you killed like 27 people before you accidentally killed him because you tripped or something like that in a video game. So DK totally applies to startups, right? So you need to know what you're fundamentally bad at and what you're fundamentally good at. You need to be incredibly self-aware of that, and you need to compensate. So I like people, I trust people, but they fuck me. So I built like a massive engine to test and review every human being that I encounter, so that I filter massively by quantitative data, because my qualitative filters are poor, right?
I'll ask you later if you're good at keeping time.
I'm terrible at keeping time, so how are we doing?
Thank you.
Aren't you the official moderator? Do you have another question we can help with, or is his time over?
His time is over. Well, we can certainly can follow up later.
Sure, all right.
Thank you.
Sophia
Thanks.
again, the CEO of Pandia Health.
Hey there. You want to? She can take my mic this time.
All right, I'm taking your mic. Hi, I'm Sophia Yen. I'm a physician and I specialize in teenagers, and my passion is increasing access for women to birth control. And the idea of Pandia Health is one of the top 3 reasons that women don't take their birth control is they don't have it on hand. And we said, hey, we can absolutely disrupt this and just ship it to women and keep shipping it to them until they tell us to stop. And then the second reason women don't take their birth control is that they don't have a prescription. And I realized I'm a doctor. I could write a prescription. And so we've come up with this asynchronous telemedicine model. Normally telemedicine, you have to do face-to-face or video, you have to do scheduling, all sorts of difficulty and complicated statistics and getting stuff together. But we've come up with an asynchronous model where the patient fills out a questionnaire at 2 a.m., 3 a.m., whatever. And then our physicians at their leisure can take a look at that and decide whether or not to write that prescription. So no one runs out of birth control on our watch. And that's Pandia Health, Pan being all, Dia being day. We have you covered 365 days a year. We're starting with birth control. We're having a recession-proof subscription. People during a recession double up on birth control rather than cut down. They may cut down Shave Club, they may cut down luxuries, but they won't cut down their birth control. My question to you is, I've been going around and some groups see us as life science, and we go to life science and they go, oh no, you're a consumer, we're kind of in this limbo. What kind of accelerators or incubators would you suggest for a healthcare startup? And then specifically, subcategory to that would be a direct-to-consumer.
So I'll answer it, I'll go quick and then give Noah. So there's something in the city called Rock Health. Have you spoken with them? Okay, so they're kind of very general health incubator. So they have biotech. What I would do is look at a very generic health incubator or accelerator. They're technically a seed accelerator. With some incubator flair, because they're high on the services. And which brings up an interesting aside before I turn it over to Noah. So one of the things that you'll notice is that there are specialized incubators and accelerators, and they tend to provide a greater depth of services because they say, okay, we're retail, or we're healthcare, or we're whatever, space exploration. And so when you go into these specialized incubators and or accelerators, you'll find a higher degree of services. So that would be one. Noah, do you want to take it further?
Do you know Startup Health in New York? It's a fantastic program. For tons of support. It's really pretty loosely organized accelerator model. So you don't have to sort of pick up and be there. You can actually do it. You can spread it out, do it remotely, but they have a huge community of mentors, and every year they at the Health 2.0 event they do an entire day of sessions, and then have a fair at the end of it, and it's fantastic. A lot of companies getting funded through it, so I'd recommend that. I also would apply to the mainstream ones, because I think it's a consumer health product, And many of the accelerators are actually, they're doing some healthcare flavored companies. So I think you could qualify for many.
Yeah, health is the new food delivery or photo sharing. So, sadly, or good for you. What stage are you, by the way?
We are seeking seed and angel funding right now. We have a product, we have customers, we have money in the door. We're getting 3 or 4 customers.
What do you mean by money in the door? Investors?
Not
Revenue.
investors, but revenue.
Okay. Yeah, by the way, it would be super helpful if you're clear on stage. So just to simplify, like what stage is the product, team, and traction, which you covered. Because it's, so by the way, you don't have any money raised?
We have friends and family right now.
All right, so you're actually for a seed accelerator ready, and okay. We're at 5 minutes, right? Because you made me conscious of myself. But yeah, so that's definitely appropriate for a seed accelerator.
So next on stage is Simi Adejumo, the founder of Adeo.
Your mic this time? A little bit of feedback. Welcome.
Hi, thank you.
There you go.
So I'm Simi Adejumo and I'm the co-founder of Adeo. What we do is we use AI to diagnose individuals' health symptoms. So a way to think about it is we actually replicate the physical interaction with a medical doctor and then we place it on a mobile phone, which is really accessible to most people. We're focusing on the African market at the moment because healthcare there is really shitty. And we think this product will actually help people there save time and get better healthcare and then improve the life expectancy. So my question really is, why is it so difficult to raise funds for startups that are focusing on African market and emerging markets? And then also joining an incubator and accelerator here for an Africa-focused startup. What kind of incubators would you recommend or accelerators?
Okay, I'll go first on this one for a minute. So first, is it like a bot or is it an app or like what's the UI to your?
At the moment, it's a web app.
It's a web app, but it's
Yes.
For mobile devices. So
Yes.
like, what's your envisioned final state? SMS?
No, a bot, a chat bot.
Right, but okay, so it could be through SMS. Okay. Well, first of all, my friend Paul Bagrill created or helped launch a couple different funds in Africa. So funding in Africa is increasing at a nice rate. There are actually a bunch of very strong. Where in Africa are you?
Nigeria.
Okay, there's a bunch of very strong incubators and accelerators throughout Africa, and Nigeria is kind of the capital of technology in Africa, besides South Africa. So number 2, I would say.
I would say Kenya is number 1. Nairobi?
Maybe, yeah, Nairobi. Okay, in top 3 then, fine. Like we're splitting hairs a little bit. So, so you're saying, so there is funding in Africa, so that statement's wrong. But you're saying you want to enter U.S.?
Yeah, so why is it difficult for startups here focused on the African markets?
It's difficult for okay, who thinks fundraising is easy? Raise your hand. Are you fucking serious?
I'm just encouraging you.
Oh, okay. Who else thinks fundraising is easy? Fundraising is not easy whether you're focused on Africa or focused on women's health or focused on whatever. Fundraising is super hard. So that part's going to be hard no matter what.
I need my question, why is it more difficult?
No idea. I don't think it's more difficult.
We have 2 investments that started out with an Africa focus, one pretty quickly shifted to a global focus, starting with emerging markets, but essentially global SMB is what it became. There was an SMS automation platform that could run on an Android phone. And we have an Africa investment that Kopo, which is still Africa focused. It's a mobile payment platform for merchants. And they also have a platform strategy and ultimately realize that to reach scale, they have to address a broader market. So I think the biggest reason is that the Africa market alone has been hard to attract institutional capital because of the market size challenge. I think that it is changing. There are some scalable companies and a few exits, right, that have happened in Africa. So that's kind of opening the path to some extent. But the biggest challenge is simply that it's just smaller, so funding options, do become more limited. I think in terms of like places to go, there have been a few accelerators that have focused on Africa. They're mostly in country. So the U.S. is probably not necessarily the best place to look for it. Neil Hant from Sherpa Ventures headed up a accelerator for a while that was pretty successful, and he's someone you should talk to. I can connect you to him. And then we're co-investors with Khosla Impact Fund and in Kopo, and they've been fantastic. And they're kind of a nexus for a lot of the investment activity that's happening in Africa. So, contacts like that are probably the best place to start.
And YC just sent a whole delegation. They were all in Africa for a while. They've been like on this like world tour trying to recruit startups. Okay, you said you want to try and encourage him. I'm going to tell you.
But they need some benevolent money, I guess.
Right.
We owe a lot to Africa and this nation.
Not true. I mean,
we are historically, right?
Historically.
Do something back. Right?
So here's what I would say. You were wrong. The question was wrong, right? You think that's true, but it's not, right? And so the first thing that you have to do as a founder is like disavow yourself of bullshit assumptions that are incorrect, that are in your mind for some reason or another. I'm tall, so it's harder for me to do this, or I'm a woman, so it's gonna be harder for me to do that, or I'm from Africa, so it's gonna be harder for me to do that. Like, why? I don't know. Like, it's not necessarily true. It's clearly your perception. We've just cited multiple examples that disavow that truth from actually being there. So, look, you can delude yourself both ways, right? Noah talked about like suspension of disbelief to run into a wall and think you're going to get through it, and that's sort of what you do as a founder. So you can believe that the impossible is possible, but you can also believe that the impossible is the only way. And so here's what I would say, and I know I'm keeping track of time. You have to let go a lot of your core assumptions, right? Just let them go, and then build that rationale based on data, right? So, don't tell me that it's harder, right? Tell me how much, make sure you understand precisely why it's harder, what the issues are, and build that fundamental understanding up. Because Noah and I just pointed to a bunch of examples, the top accelerator in the world, sending people to Africa, Facebook doing Africa funding, your Khosla's impact on blah, blah, blah. So, it's not, what you said isn't really true, right?
I think many funds don't have a geography restriction. We don't, and we had no intention of investing in Africa companies, but we met these teams and thought their ideas were great, and did the analysis, and we viewed it like any other investment. So I think you just have to, you may have to do more meetings to find the right investor, but they're out there.
Okay,
Hi,
who's next?
Adeo's going to be here until midnight to answer every question. So next one is
2 a.m.
Hadi Nahari, the founder and CEO of Estelle.
Welcome. Boom, let's give some applause. Woo! Nice to meet you.
So, Hadi Nahari. My background is in security and machine learning, and I was leading the applications of deep learning and cybersecurity at NVIDIA. My co-founder, say hi to Christian Korsky, was the lead of Android Auto. So what we are doing right now, we quit our jobs a month ago, and we are working on applications of deep learning and AI on autonomous and security and safety. So we're in stealth, so we don't have name. Quickly jumping into, you had a question?
No, I didn't. I mean, yes,
So-
But you were.
autonomous vehicles?
Autonomous vehicles, and by vehicles, we mean anything that moves, not just necessarily passenger and trucks, drones and anything. We believe that everything is going to be mobile devices with wheels or propellers or jet engines on them, and we are creating the infrastructure and backend supporting system to make them move safely and securely and more efficiently and user-friendly. So my question is, at least in our field, the valuations are like crazy. So how, from entrepreneurs' perspective, do we go about valuation, specifically either accelerator or incubator? What are the right ways to measure proper valuations? We don't want to go shoot unnecessarily high, as autos and cruises of the world are doing, but we also don't want to go low. So some guidelines, some thoughts about how to go about it from entrepreneurs' perspective would be helpful. And it's something that I recognize that for engineer types like us, it's usually an uncomfortable conversation. Many of us try to avoid it, and we may end up in a situation like you, who get effed up after 750 million, value creation. So.
Yeah, I can start. I think so. It is important. There are always outliers, in any given week, in Silicon Valley. Strange things happen, and you can't necessarily let one outlier change your thinking too much, because the right investor for you is more about like the fit and that relationship and all of that. It isn't just about the valuation. Plus, you do need to get a round raised. So, if you just chase valuation, I've seen many teams that felt they were up here for good reason, and turned down a lot of interest trying to get the right valuation, and actually ended up never raising a round and not getting it done. So I think I wouldn't get too distracted with it. I think a smart investor won't screw you on valuation, because they'll know you're going to need to raise rounds in the future. They'll know they need to hold reserves and continue to participate and build their stake in the company. And if you're starting out at too low a valuation, it's not going to work, right? So I think my recommendation would be, don't enter into the valuation discussions with too much of a bias. Try to get multiple conversations going, and getting multiple points of view with like multiple term sheets. That's the best way to find the true valuation. Or if you go down the path of the investor, have that two-way conversation with them about what's reasonable. And I'd say in Series A, most rounds are the dilution for the round is in the range of 25 to 35% of the company, and the amount raised is related to it's related to the stage, but also the capital intensiveness of the business. So if the business is one that needs 10 million to show product market fit, you have to raise that amount. The dilution should be essentially the same from a percentage of the company.
So let me quickly add to that, be super fast. All accelerators are basically paying 25 grand for 6 to 10%. So that's where you're going. Like, that's it, that's the deal. Now, some of them have follow-on things where they'll put another 100 grand or 150 grand in. They'll usually do that in a safe note, which ironically I invented, but that's a long story for another night. And with that said, so you get additional money on top of it with many of them, but you're basically selling $25,000. You're getting $25,000 for 6 to 10%. That's sort of standard deal worldwide, even in like Pakistan. Now, back to what Noah was saying, and he nailed it on the head, and I just want to chime in and get to the next one. You're always going to be selling about 25 to 35. 35 is a little rich. You can say almost like 20 to 30 in Silicon Valley, 25 to 35 outside of Silicon Valley in each round. Okay, so it doesn't really, the way to look at this is not, that's how much you're going to be selling. So then how much money do you need? And you can't be like, I'm running this kind of company and I need $50 million. It's like, what, you're like a consumer internet company with no traction? Like, you don't need $50 million. So basically what will happen is investors know how much you need at each stage because you're not that far off from other businesses, and you should know how much you need at each stage. And then you can just assume you're going to be selling between 20 on the low end and 35% on the high end of your company for each of those stages, and that sets your valuation, right?
What determines, are you on the 20 side or 35%?
That's like really how much of an outlier you are from your peers. So if you have a supreme team with great traction and you're fucking kicking ass, then you're on the 20% side. But if you're not, then you're going to be on the 30 to 35% side. So really, like your execution and quality of each of the component things that Noah mentioned earlier swing the value. But it doesn't actually matter that much materially to you, because it's really the dollar amount. And I can tell you right now, you can just average it to 25%, right? I mean, for your planning purposes.
Yeah, and I was actually including options pool, so so net 35%ish, on the high side with the options pool. So coming out of it, the founders should still own north of 60%, of the company.
Coming out of what? Not the end. I think Galarian's around 10.
Coming out of that round.
Yeah.
Would you last part? Would you recommend not as entrepreneurs not even talking about valuation? Just go through the value add, the team. What is it that you're doing, and leave that up to.
All you need to tell them is how much money you need, and and then they'll either agree with you or disagree, and that's your valuation.
Yeah, I think it's that dialogue, of having the financial plan, knowing, what you need to, get your product to market, and then, you should have an ask, right, of what do you think you need to raise. And each investor, based really, largely on their fund size, will have a bite size that's right for them, and there'll be either a fit where they can lead, or they wouldn't be able to lead, and they'd have to follow. But it's I think in the autonomous vehicle space, you have like these two crazy examples where, right, Auto was self-funded, right, and then, Cruise did YC, which was this, YC is effectively this, minimal valuation, and then, sold for $1 billion, right, shortly thereafter. So I think it basically is telling you that nobody knows. There's no right answer.
Yeah, but there are hundreds of dead examples of companies in that space as well. So, first of all, don't believe everything you read in the media. And to your point, don't focus on the outliers. It's like, look at this company that built this thing that was $1 billion. It's like, I'm going to do the same thing. It's like, no, you're not. I promise you, because that's a one-off. All right.
Glenn Specker, thank you. CTO, back.
Hi, Glenn Specker. I've got a small company looking at imaging, trying to work the computer knowledge recognition extracted from what you see in the drone. The question is
you just. Okay, that was fast. So you're doing image recognition from drone cameras for the purposes of
starting in agriculture, systems at sea, extracting information depending on the customer, different verticals, focused on what's important for that customer.
So it's somewhat of a service business, so you can have like a
Correct.
surveillance drone, you can have like an inspection drone, you can have like a,
Agricultural drone or
right, and then
integrating.
you do the system interpretation of the video feed to figure crap out.
Correct, and you can either use mathematics or you can try to learn a better way.
Okay.
But the question becomes,
What stage are you?
talking to angels and
So you have a team, product, and some revenue?
no revenue in the levels that
Well,
that-
no,
that
no,
you're
no one,
expecting.
yeah.
Right, right,
Do you have
right.
some revenue?
Some.
Okay.
Anyway, so the question is, in order to get team, often it becomes advantageous to trade stock to advisors or to other people on the team. How does that complicate a deal if I've got 5 people that each own 1.5%? Is that a bad thing? Is that a bad direction? Or is that a good thing if I end up having a team without having paid people at the time we're ready?
You should spend lots of stock on team, but cautiously. So you need to test your team for an extended period of time through relationships and hook and by crook. And when you believe that they are competent, that is when you start doling out the equity. But I've never seen an investor, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong here, Noah, it's like, you've given too much away to the team. It's like, they like that, especially if it's a competent and engaged team that hasn't resigned, where they get pissed off. It's like, what, you gave some guy 10%? Where is he? Oh, he quit. Like, that's annoying. So, you test them, you know they're great, and then, hoarding, okay. There are a lot of like super naive questions about equity. I'll turn it over to Noah in a second. Okay, what is equity worth? Anyone want to guess?
Nothing.
Well, it's worth what someone will pay for it, right? And someone will only pay for it if they want it, right? So like if you could give your equity away to a bunch of people, but you want those people to want the equity, because that desire to get the equity creates the value, which in turn gets perceived by people like, no, and in the end of the day, then it gets traced back to the amount. So giving, it's not like you're never giving equity away. You're building a relationship where someone wants the equity, right? That creates value in the underlying company, and that value then can be transposed into people like Noah, who will give you eventually money, because they look around and they say, God, these employees are engaged, they have equity, they want the equity, we want the equity, people want the equity, ergo it's valuable.
Yeah, I think what you would rather have is a group of employees, right, contributors in the business, who have substantial equity and are committed to the company, right, and are ready to join full time as soon as the funding comes in. And what you don't want is a set of people who are not committed and not around, who have little bits of equity, but it means nothing because they're not helping and they can't come on full time and they're gone, So there's no point in giving people small amounts if they're then gonna, wander away, right? It's much, it doesn't really pose a problem, because when investment comes in, it just dilutes everybody, right? So that's not gonna pose any sort of a barrier to raising the round. But use equity. It's better to be generous and use equity to lock in the team than it is to do small amounts and not get anything for it in return.
Right, but you get upset when you look at a cap table, there's a bunch of people that hold equity and they're not around anymore, and you're like, what happened?
Yeah, definitely. It can be a problem if that's a large number, but it's also a little bit of there's a little bit of a question of like, how did it happen, and it's better to have a small group of committed people with the larger stake.
Cool. All right, I think, thanks Glenn, and I think we are ready for questions from the audience.
I got a question. Founder guy, didn't you put up about a year ago a slide at Rocket Space? You said VCs used to be winners, now they just want to do deals. Wasn't that your presentation?
Sounds somewhat familiar. Used to pick one. Well, right. But now they want to get into the hot deals. Absolutely.
Duncan was there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you were passing up a storm with all the women there. I thought that was interesting.
How? By saying more women should be entrepreneurs?
No, I mean, you used a lot of cuss words.
Oh, okay. That well, which I haven't changed, thank God. So,
That was him. Yeah.
I was kind of shocked that you caught my attention, because that means that you tell it like it is. Well, with that statement said, okay, my question for you, I went to another talk at Triple Ring last week, and the guy did about VCs. And the bottom line here is, you know, if you're not a 10Xer, okay, it seems like the VCs aren't interested. And if you have a company, it's going to be $50, $100, $200 million company, and has some social merit, where do you go to get funding? You know, get that 3, 5, 10 million to get off the ground.
well, so you don't go to VC, that's for sure. But you know, if you're a social company, that's, I guess. Let me make sure I understand your question. Repeat it. Social merit company, but that's looking at like a 3 to 10x.
Yeah, like not like a Snapchat, you know, some
Right.
social media that to me is, at my age, is garbage. Okay, but the thing is like a medical company, like a company that we're working with that can, you know, cool down the brain, you know, let people not have strokes. I mean, it's not going to be, you know, a 10Xer. Okay, where do they go to get money? You know, I guess there's a big void here in this cell phone.
Sure.
And even I've had that talk with Sam, you know Sam, my uncle. There's a big void in that $2 to $10 billion range, I guess, in a lot of companies. There's a lot of good companies that don't get funded.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And they will continue not to be, sadly.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, venture capital is a you know, it's this exception that proves the rule. It's a very narrow, you know, slice of the capital markets, and it only works for an extremely narrow set of companies. Most private businesses in the world get started with friends and family capital, and you know, to some extent, you know, government sponsored, government, you know, subsidies or banks. I think they're in the Bay Area. You have all these angel groups, which are great, and many of them will actually gladly back a company that can exit for $50 to $100 million because they can.
2 to 5 million to work.
Yeah, definitely. They'll do 2 to 5 million. Maybe not in the first round, but you know, in over a couple rounds. So.
No, so look, there are two answers to that question. Angels are generally pretty, maybe too generous with the, like going to angels is a good option, 2 to 5 million, and you know they're happy to see the smaller range exits that you were referring to. So I would say I would start there, and then they're easy to map. AngelList basically has a great directory. You can sort by amount. You can click on people, see what they've done before, see what they're interested. They tell you, I'm interested in like bots, or I'm interested in this, or I'm interested in social impact issues. Second thing I would say is there's actually a ton of special purpose funds, like Pierre Omidyar has a fund that you know invests in social impact stuff. They'll do Africa. They'll do all sorts of like things that are not traditional. So if you actually do a few minutes of research, and they're actually even, so not only are the angels pretty generous in this space, but these social impact funds have some of the best terms in the world because they're not really investing on economic return profiles, they're investing for social impact. So if you can find a fund that's focused on an area that you're interested in, you're not only going to get the money, but you're going to actually get pretty attractive terms compared to venture side.
Have you guys ever looked at the National Investment Banker Association investment bankers? Nobody seems to know there's a whole tier, 200 to 300 to do that range. You don't give away the form. They don't teach that.
Get ready for the next question.
You know,
Okay, we're going to the next round. We can continue over a beer.
Over there.
Yeah?
Question.
Hi, my name is Yi. My question somewhat falls in line with the previous gentleman, so just a little backstory. I actually work for a company called Sweep Energy, and we are a startup in the Central Valley. And what we do is we provide hardware and software solutions for production companies. So basically, we provide energy monitors for their equipment. And our vision is that we want to prevent, equipment shutdowns and failures because, from our past experience, these shutdowns are crucial for their survival as a company, and they lose a lot of money when it tends to happen.
Okay,
So
great.
My question
Are you the CEO?
No, I'm a co-founder.
Okay.
So our current state is we have a product, we have a team. Our device is currently deployed in some of the facilities, but we have no customers, or I can say potential customers.
Wait. So if your devices are deployed, you have to have customers.
It's more of a partners.
Oh, so they're like test deployments?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Are they interesting companies?
They're I can't drop any names, but they're fairly large. They're multi.
Okay, so what's your question?
So my question is for a company in our current state, and we're actively looking for seed funding. So how would you start the process, and where would you go? What kind of resources is available to us? Let me take that.
Yeah, you should start.
Yeah, I mean, look, so it sounds great. You got big customers using your stuff, and like it's like the problem is whether they like it or not. But let's assume they do, because most people don't use things they don't like bad smelling deodorant, for example. So I'm presume that they like it, so you're in a great spot and you want to raise. It sounds to me though that you're not really at a seed stage, but you're at an angel stage, and there's a little bit of, 30 minutes goes by really fast, so let me try and surmise it, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong. So if you're sort of like team with a little bit of product traction and funding, you can go into an accelerator. And that's an option, so maybe an accelerator is one way to go. But another way to go is to go to angels if you're sort of any funding. Have you raised any funding?
So far, no.
Okay, so generally speaking, there's a friends and family round, which is like mom and dad giving you some money. It usually comes in as a personal loan. They're structured friends and family rounds, but they need to be accredited. Then you'll do an angel round, which are wealthy individuals that believe in your space. Then you'll go into a seed accelerator if you want. Then you'll actually do maybe a few more angel rounds. Then you'll do a seed round, which tends to come from professional angel investors like Mike Makeables of Floodgate or First Round Capital. These are sort of super angels that have professionalized, and they write $750 or $1.25 million checks, things like that. Then you'll go into Noah and the Series A's. But did I miss anything there? So it sounds to me like you're probably at the angel level.
Yeah. I think for the very first money in, it's usually someone with there's either a relationship, right? Someone who knows the team. Or someone who, an angel who has specific understanding of your space and knows this is a problem that needs to be solved, and this, your solution needs to exist. And I think in your industry, there's actually a lot of accomplished execs in manufacturing and process industries who have money in the stock market and would love to back an exciting, innovative startup, and give them advice and help out. And that's where I would go. Is I would go to go to CEOs, VP, and C-level execs at companies in your industry for the first money, and then that will lead to interest from other angels who are more pure financial investors, but we'll look at that as validation.
And that's the definition of an angel investor right there. So someone who has that experience. Do we have another question? Don't be shy.
Thank you.
What's your name?
Malcolm Gilbert. co-founder and CTO of a company called Idea, where it's seed funded. Basically, we did not do an incubator, and I was wondering.
Shame on you. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. So you alluded to like a lot of people saying that the peer network that they gained was like really important. Like, what's a way of like kind of building that peer network, or like kind of quote unquote making up for like not doing an incubator?
You want to go first? Because I went first last time. I mean, yeah, go and then I'll go.
Let's see. Yeah, there's so many ways to build the peer network. You know, I think events are a good place, right? So events like this. Where did you go to school?
MIT.
Yeah, I mean MIT.
Yeah.
MIT probably is, you know, one of the most active alumni networks of entrepreneurs. They have events all the time. So that's probably all you need to do, actually.
Yeah, I mean, here's what I did. So one of my big peer networks is obviously from school, but the other thing that I did is, it was like 19 years ago, almost 20, approaching 20 years ago. I was kind of a person like you, you know, and I don't know how old you are, but I was a somewhat new founder. And I was like, my life is lonely and shitty. So I started a poker group. Now, if you take a bunch of lonely and shitty entrepreneurs and you add 20 years of time, they are like the most successful entrepreneurs on the planet today. So, especially if you pick well. Because if you like add 20 years and like if you're not good at what you do, then you just fundamentally suck. And I suck, so we all just suck because I either picked you wrong or you were an idiot, or I was an idiot, or we're all idiots, but literally added 20 years. And like, I can't tell you who's on the list, it's like super secret, but like, it's like everyone you read about. And all it was is like, I'm lonely, my life is shitty. I'm lonely too, and my life is shitty. I'm like, let's play poker. Okay, add 20 years, they're all like super awesome and run the world. So that's what I would do. Other questions? I think yes, young lady from Turkey.
So,
Am I allowed to call them?
I don't know if it's like, goes for everyone, but so my question is, we are an ecosystem. We are bringing 32 companies a year from Turkey to here. They are all tech companies. The revenues change from 0 to 10 million, so it's like quite diverse. Right now, they are committing to come here and open companies and stay here 5 to 6 months. So they really want this traction in the US.
You mean open a subsidiary in the US?
Yes.
Okay.
And they're committing to like lead some people here, and they want to have this market here. So my question is, they are looking for kind of these growth partners to come down, business development people that are going to be helping them, and they are trying to find out, like my team is trying to find out how to reach to these business development people, if they are like people or if they are going to be groups, if they are going
So
to
is this like, I mean, you're using these terms, right? But let's just cut to the chase here. So they want to open a company in the US, and they need like a regional manager, is that what you're saying? Or is this like basically like a BD person? Like so they're opening this US sub, and they want to staff it with like a BD person or a regional manager, what would you say?
So it's going to be one of our guys. It's going to work with my company, which is INCUBATE,
Right.
and it's going to be different people, and because it's going to be sector specific, I'm assuming.
Right.
And they are going to help them kind of hold their hands with their operations in the beginning, kind of like a consultancy and.
Right. And the point is just to get customers and go into the US market?
Customers, investors, if they need a product change, just advise them what they need in this market in the beginning when they are starting.
So what's the question?
So how do I find these people? Are they in accelerators? Are they in incubators? Is it something else?
Noah. I love this. I have like someone I can just pass all the questions that are hard off to. I got a math question if you want to help Noah as well.
Yeah, I think so you want somebody full-time. Or not necessarily. So these are more mentors?
Yes.
Okay. So are you familiar with Plug and Play Tech Center? So they have a great program when an entrepreneur exits or an executive leaves their company, is looking for something new to do. They have this EIR program where they just they come to Plug and Play every day, and they get assigned to like 5 companies, and they just sit near them and they just help them out. And it leads to like amazing relationships. Often they join the companies, often they end up like doing BD type work, and it works really well. So something like that could be a solution.
But they are super snobby and they are super expensive. So is there any kind of thing that is...
You mean Plug and Play is snobby and expensive?
Well,
I mean, you don't have to be snobby and expensive, but you can do a variation of it that's like friendly and cheap.
Yeah, they don't get paid though. The EIRs don't get paid anything. It's
EIR stands for Entrepreneur in Residence, but I would say in the case of Plug and Play, it's more like Executive in Residence.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, Executive in Residence. Yeah.
Okay. Is there any other programs that we can work to, or...
Let's see.
No. It's a bit basically if you're trying to find people, it's called Hustle, right? And there's a great tool for such thing called Hustle. It's called LinkedIn. So when you apply Hustle to LinkedIn, because you said yourself, 0 to 10 million, all different industries, you need to find someone who's going to help them. You can't just pull people off the bench. You got to find people who are specific to what they need, and this is going to be hustle. But that's why you're in a consulting business, because when your ass stops moving, you stop making money. So when you're running, you make money. When you stop running, you stop making money. So when you make money, you hustle. So if you want to find the right people to help these companies really build, you hit LinkedIn. You create programs like the EIR, but these are all work intensive, but you get paid for your work, which is good.
Do you know Tarkan Munir? Tarkan is he's one of the most accomplished Turkish entrepreneurs in the U.S. He was the CEO of Wise, which sold to Dell for $1 billion about 4 years ago. He's CEO of Nexenta, which is one of our portfolio companies. And he has this fantastic network of Turkish entrepreneurs that he manages and keeps in touch with. And Tarkan Munir, M-A-N-E-R. And I'm glad to introduce you to him.
All right, well, WeWork is asking us politely to wrap up because we got to put the chairs away. But Noah and I can hang out for 1.3 minutes. And so if you have a question that takes less than 1.3 minutes, we're there for you. But thank you very much.
Let's thank Noah and Adeo.
Thanks everybody. Thanks a lot to WeWork for letting the space here. Here you can ask some more questions here while we wrap up.